Alright, so technically the whole reason that I even got super excited about doing this channel was because I wanted to do book discussions much more specifically, whatever I'm trying to say. I really wanted to do book discussions on one author in particular, that being Philip K. Dick, just because I can't find anything on him online, and that's just a downright shame. And the funny thing is, I've gone this long, without actually doing any videos on Philip, my boy Phil. Anyway, today that changes, because today we're doing some Phil. With all that being said, let's discuss Dr. Bloodmoney. Let's see, Dr. Bloodmoney. Now last week, I'm like, well, last week, as if it was a week ago, because I have no idea when these videos come out, but that's not the point. Last time we did this, we discussed Neuromancer. And first things first, we're gonna full spoilers on anything Dr. Bloodmoney here. When we do the let's discuss, let's just assume we're discussing the book and we're going all in. Last time we did Neuromancer, and I made the comment that Neuromancer was a fever dream of ideas, but it wasn't necessarily enjoyable to read. It wasn't really that fun. Okay, so this one is similar in the fact that it's a fever dream of ideas, but this one's fun to read, and I mean very fun to read. And actually, it's probably a 250-ish page book. 266. Anyway, yeah, 266 pages of just amazing. But the thing is, it feels like a 400-page book, not in a bad way, like, oh my god. Hold on. This is a disaster. What does this feel? Oh, it's not done right. No wonder. I flubbered it up. Well, can't be perfect all the time. It's just so devastating to learn. Okay. Anyway, what was I doing? I was in the middle of some. Oh, it's 266 pages, and he makes those 266 pages feel like 400. In the sense, not that it drags, not that, oh my god, that felt too long. It could have been 400 pages. He fit so much content into those 200, because a lot of times, don't get me wrong, I love my Philip K. Dick, but a lot of times it'll be like, there's not too terribly much going on, and you get like one or two characters and you follow them. So they're shorter, they're paced a little bit quicker, but anyway, this one's got a big cast of characters. They've all got, some stuff to do. They've all got some pretty interesting things going on with them, interesting things happening with them and to them and about them. So it's got enough content that he really could have stretched that out into a bigger novel, a thicker novel, explored it a little bit more, and I would have ate a 400-page book of that up in a heartbeat, and it probably would have felt just as fast, just as good, maybe even better. But my point is, for that small of a book, it's like, man, you got a lot in there. And when I start talking about it, you will know. If you haven't read it, then I don't know. Either get out of here or just check this out, because maybe you'll be like, man, I need to go pick up some Philip. This is, you know what? This might be my second favorite Philip K. Dick book of all time so far. I haven't read them all. Second only to Ubik, as I just said. And so far, those are the two kings of Philip. And there's nothing wrong with the ones that do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, the ones that became big movies. Total Recall, Actually, I didn't read that one. Minority Report's the one I read, out of the ones that became movies anyway. And Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Of course, everybody's read that. But if you've read it, I should say. Anyway, so this book's amazing, is what I'm saying. Go pick it up, darn it. It's one of his best, by far, hands down, bar none. I'll fight you over it. Don't at me. Anyway, I'm not even on Twitter. So the book starts out, and it's just a normal day in the life of these people in this TV repair shop. And it's going to introduce you to some of your biggest key players, being Stewart and Hoppy Harrington. I can't help but smile. It's so ridiculously insensitive, I guess. In today's world, it probably would not be acceptable to make one of your absolute main characters. He was born with a defect where he was born with no arms and no leg, and his character's name is Hoppy. You're in chapter 1 and you realize that your main character, other than Stewart, is Hoppy Harrington, and his name is Hoppy, and he has no arms and no legs. And right off the bat, you're like, what am I reading? And this, I don't think this would be allowed in 2021. It just wouldn't. That being said, he is arguably the most powerful character in the whole book, and most able and capable, and actually relatively well fleshed out and thought out. It actually psychologically kind of works as the book goes on and you get to the end. But anyway, so you get that, and you get your Stewart. He's kind of the one who doesn't get much of an arc, and that's a good thing, because he kind of starts out right dead center as a real everyman. But you got Hoppy, and he's kind of like the low man on the totem pole, but he's the smartest of the group. And then you have the boss, and then you have all the other people, and then you got Stewart, and he's just kind of stuck right there in the middle. He's not smart, but he's not on the bottom of the totem pole, but he's not on the top of the totem pole, but he's just an everyman. And he'll kind of fade away and kind of come back and fade away and come back as the story progresses, and we focus on all these different characters and groups. But by the end of the story, he kind of starts as your everyman, and he ends as your everyman. So it's probably the most relatable character in the whole book. Basically, you get introduced to this plot, or this cast of characters, and the world, and Dr. Bloodmoney is there, and he's going to see a psychiatrist. You get introduced to a psychiatrist as well. You're getting introduced to your characters. You get like 30 pages into the book, you get introduced to people, and the bombs go off. Now, at the time, Dr. Bloodmoney is imagining, or what if the bombs got triggered and went off? So he's thinking about the bombs going off when the bombs go off. And it destroys the whole world, and now we get to live in post-apocalyptic whatever. But because it went off while Dr. Bloodmoney was thinking about what if the bombs went off, now he's absolutely convinced that he has magical powers, and that he's the one that set the bombs off in the first place, and he needs to go into hiding to keep the world safe. Because if he doesn't go into hiding, well, first off, the world's after him because he's the one who created the bombs, and they blame him for it. And so he has to go into hiding to stay safe, because if they find him, they will lynch him, basically. They'll have him hung up and strung up because they blame him for what happened. He blames himself for what happened because telepathically he magically set those bombs off, and now he needs to go into hiding to not only stay safe from the mobs that are after him, but he's also trying to protect the world from his magical powers that could very much destroy the planet. At least this is what he thinks in his mind. And yes, and it'll get to the point later on in the book where somebody starts to irritate him and get on his nerves, and he'll be like, if I just thought hard enough, you'd fall over dead. And I'm just like, I don't think your powers work like that, dude. He can think it and it will happen. At least that's what he believes. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Wait for it. And once the bombs go off, now we're in the post-apocalyptic world. And now we have two settings that we're following, because it just kind of, the introduction gave us the TV repair shop. Well, after the bombs go off, a lot of people flee the city, and they go to live rurally out in the middle of nowhere, out in the countryside, and they're going to rebuild society out there as a country community. So you have your country town, and then you have the people who didn't leave, and they stayed in the city, which is pretty much just Stewart. He's a salesman of tobacco products and such. But he's like a traveling salesman for this guy in the city. He's pretty much the one who stayed behind. Whereas Hoppy got out of the city, Dr. Bloodmoney got out of the city, and actually Hoppy and Dr. Bloodmoney end up both in the same small community out of town. Dr. Bloodmoney, of course, being in hiding. Now Hoppy, in the beginning, granted I said that he was no arms, no legs. Well, he had like a little cart that he sat in that would be wheeled around, that he could wheel around, and I'm going to say robot arms, kind of. They were described as very cheap government issue extensors. Think of the most generic little metal claw-like graspy things you could imagine, just so he could grab and move things, and then he sat in a cart. I also said at the beginning that he was the smartest one in the entire group. He's basically like next level genius, and he's also extremely mechanically inclined. He's also telekinetic, and he can move things with his mind. Yes, it gets weird. Well, he's now like the most important person in the community. He runs everything technologically. He builds everything for him. He just makes mechanical things that no one else can make. He can fix things no one else can fix. And in the process, he's rebuilt himself a new cart. He's rebuilt himself some new arms. Now he's got like this motorized cart that he can pretty much drive anywhere over anything. He doesn't build like legs, which with his abilities might have been more appropriate. But he still rides around this weird little cart thing, but it's now much nicer because he built it himself. So it's really a testament to just how amazing this person really is, how really, truly, genuinely capable this one individual is, which is interesting. You know, you're like, the dude named Hoppy with no arms and no legs is by far the most capable person in the community. And he's telekinetic. All right. Now, where am I at? I don't know, I'm lost. Back to, who am I on to? I really get sidetracked with some of this stuff. It's okay. I don't even know what I want to discuss. Let's just talk. What about it? What do you want to discuss about this book? Walt Dangerfield. We're going to backtrack just a hair, but in the beginning, you know, before the bombs go off and everything's good, Walt Dangerfield, it was a rich man and his wife, and they were getting loaded into a rocket to be the first people to immigrate to Mars. So they're going to be the first couple on Mars, and you know, then everybody else will slowly trickle over and follow, and we're going to form a colony, and blah, 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 blah. As his rocket goes up and the different stages break off, right as he gets to the last stage and it's finally broken off, and he needs to go in orbit like, I don't know, a couple of rotations around the Earth before the next phase kicks in. He starts to orbit the planet, and the bombs go off. And when the infrastructure goes down to the planet from the bombs going off, all of his systems lose connection, It stops his trip from triggering into the next phase, which is him shooting off to Mars. So now, basically, him and his wife are stuck in a pod that's now trapped in orbit around the Earth for basically the rest of eternity. And they're living up there, just the two of them, on what supplies they have. And the solitude, just the hell of their existence of being trapped up there gets to be too much for his wife. She becomes depressed and she ends up committing suicide. Now, Walt's been up there for years. He's got a couple years left worth of supplies. He's not entirely sure, but he can guesstimate a few more years left of supplies. And his wife's been gone for a couple years. He's starting to become a bit of a hypochondriac. He just his mind's really breaking down from the isolation up there. He's trying to maintain his sanity by running almost like a weird radio station because he has books. He was taking a wealth of knowledge with him to Mars. So he has books, he has records, he has music, he has all this stuff. So he basically transmits a radio signal back down, and he'll just read books, but he reads them out loud over the radio so that people down on planet Earth have nothing left but this one transmission signal coming from his, they call it a satellite, but it's really not. It's just kind of like the pod that he was in that he transmits down to Earth. But they listen to the music that he plays, and they listen to the books that he reads, and it keeps him sane, and it kind of keeps the people on Earth sane. It's like the only thing he has, and their only radio station, kind of, And it's just like a sense of the old world kind of. It's really neat, the idea of this guy being trapped up there, but it's also, you know, just the idea of the effects that would have on him, you know, being the isolation, being trapped, the loss of his wife. It's just, you're like, this is, you know, this has got some really nice themes that you can really kind of delve into a little bit when you think about him. Anyway, so he's up there, and that's super neat. I really liked him as a character too. Actually, I liked all of these characters except for Hoppy. I didn't really ever like Hoppy. Anyway, all of the characters are great, and the book's so much fun to read. I mean, his writing style is just amazing. I can't overstate it enough. And it's not just this book, it's every book he's ever written. I loved his, and I always read his books and I'm like, I gotta write that down, I gotta write that down, I gotta write that down. There was a part of this book when we get to Prince Edward of Wales, which is a horse, by the way. Stuart has a horse and he names him Prince Edward of Wales. So we might as well do this now. Okay, so Stuart is a traveling salesman and he goes to San Francisco to sell something, I forget, it doesn't matter. And he has to leave the horse behind to go across the river just to find out that it was pointless for him to go. And he comes back and poor Prince Edward of Wales has been killed by some hooligan vandals. At this point I just stopped and I went and got like a little booklet that I carry with me that I'm always like, I'm going to take notes on things, and I never do. The book's freaking empty. But anyway, this is like the first time I ever was like, hold up, and I went and got that, and I just wrote down a page number, and we're gonna like insert epic Philip K. Dick reading here. When Stuart McConkie returned to the East Bay from his trip to the peninsula south of San Francisco, he found that someone, no doubt a group of veterans living under the pier, had killed and eaten his horse, Edward, Prince of Wales. All that remained was the skeleton, legs, and head, a heap worthless to him or anyone else. He stood by it pondering. Well, it had been a costly trip, and he had arrived too late anyhow. The farmer at Penny Apiece had already disposed of the electronic parts of the Soviet missile. Mr. Hardy would supply another horse, no doubt, but he had been fond of Edward, Prince of Wales, and it was wrong to kill a horse for food, because they were so vitally needed for other purposes. They were the mainstay of transportation now that most of the wood had been consumed by the wood-burning cars, and the people in cellars using it in the winter to keep warm. And horses were needed in the job of reconstruction. They were the main source of power in the absence of electricity. The stupidity of killing Edward maddened him. It was, he thought, like barbarism, the thing they all feared. It was anarchy, right here in the middle of the city, right in downtown Oakland, in broad daylight. It was what you would expect the Red Chinese to do. I love it so much. I hope you enjoyed it. If not, I'm sorry. Okay, so after this, so this is really a low point for Stuart, and he ends up going out to this community, and he convinces his boss to send him kind of as an emissary to go and see if they can trade, because they have products in the town, they have products out here in this community, and he wants to kind of combine them. We already are traveling salesmen, so we'll take your product too, and we'll travel and sell it, which then your product has now a bigger market because we are selling it for you, but at the same time, we're all benefiting from blah, 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 blah. This is Stuart's big grand plan. Now all your characters are kind of converging in one place. Also, while this is happening, there's a little girl, there's a little girl here who can hear voices, or a voice. She has an imaginary friend that she talks to, and come to find out it's not an imaginary friend, it's actually a real voice that she hears, but only she can hear it because she had a Siamese twin, which was her brother, who didn't develop properly, but he's like a little fetus type thing that lives in her abdomen, and he can telepathically communicate with her. He can talk to other people telepathically too, but he chooses not to because he doesn't want people to know that he exists. So she tells people that he does, but he won't talk to them to prove that he exists, so they just think she's crazy. And then you also find out later on that he can talk to dead people, and he can swap consciousness with consciousnesses. I don't know. With people, if he chooses to. She grabs, an animal, and holds it up to the spot on her abdomen where he lives, and he can swap consciousnesses. And then now she has whatever voice that was stuck inside of her body. Yeah. So there's that. Oh, and due to the nuclear fallout, animals are mutated. And nuclear fallout doesn't make you worse, it makes you better. So now we have talking dogs and stuff like that. Why? I don't know, because Dr. Bloodmoney has a dog and the dog talks to people. Because nuclear fallout. What? Does it really make sense? No, but it doesn't. It's leaned so heavily into the realm of just batshit crazy that it doesn't really matter. What else happens in this ridiculous tale of a book? So, and everybody's kind of deteriorating. Dr. Bloodmoney is getting a little bit more paranoid, a little bit more crazy, a little bit more out of control. Hoppy has been secretly working in the background the entire time. The mental degradation that Dangerfield is going through has been observed by Hoppy, and then he kind of starts poking at him and pushing him over the edge and off the edge, and he's trying to kill off Dangerfield because he now has created a system, radio system of his own, so powerful that it can basically take over the radio system of the satellite, and then he can broadcast up, rebroadcast back down. If he can get Dangerfield to die or to commit suicide, then he can switch places with him just by mimicking his voice over the radio, and then people will think he's Dangerfield, and then he can take Dangerfield's place as the voice in the sky, which is all fueled by the fact that for years and years and years no one wanted to acknowledge the fact of how talented he really was. He was just the handicapped kid. So when he eventually, the bombs go off and now he actually is useful, and he is arguably the most important member of this little township, it doesn't really matter psychologically for him. It still doesn't register because in his brain he's still trapped in kind of the hurt that he had to suffer and endure in the first, 90% of his life, to the point where he's now devolved mentally into kind of like an evil mastermind. Everybody loves Walt Dangerfield. So if I can take over Walt Dangerfield and everybody thinks that I'm Walt Dangerfield, then everybody will love me, even though they all already kind of acknowledge him as the most useful in the city. But then at the same time, he's also doing some shit that's starting to look and really is unhinged, because he is starting to become unhinged. So now people are actually starting to fear him. Yeah, maybe it's cliche, maybe whatever, for the little broken boy with the handicap who was treated badly to grow up to be damaged and the evil mastermind. But it plays out and, you're like, this is, I don't know. It's kind of heady, that's kind of intense, while at the same time it's completely ridiculous because we're still playing into Dr. Bloodmoney's imagined superpowers. We're also leaning real hard into the telepathic fetus that's inside the little girl. We're still in real whack job land. Then, in the end, Hoppy's going to go completely out of control. He's going to start killing people in the town, because they're all going to really turn on him there at the end once he really starts to get completely out of control. And the little girl takes it upon herself to try and go take out Hoppy, and in the process, she lets her brother free, and he ends up swapping consciousnesses with an owl, and he flies through the woods for a while. It's very strange. He ends up swapping consciousnesses with Hoppy, and then Hoppy ends up dying. It's just, it's insane. It gets really out of control there towards the end. Then, and while all this crazy bullshit's going down, before Dr. Bloodmoney dies, he thinks again about the bombs going off, and a second wave of bombs goes off. So then you're like, okay, while simultaneously telling you that there's a psychic fetus and a telekinetic Hoppy, it's also been telling you that Dr. Bloodmoney's batshit crazy and he has no powers whatsoever. He's not magical. But the one time he thinks about bombs going off, his bombs going off, they all do, and it causes the end of the world. And the second time he thinks about it, they all do. See, now you're like, so was he really setting the bombs off? I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure. I know I'm just not selling these books at all, am I? But it was amazing. It's just everything about this is good, and it's just ideas that are completely out there, psychotically out there, so far out there that you're just like, I wonder about the man who wrote this book. At this point, absolute 9 out of 10. I rate the book 9 out of 10. There's no other way of rating it. Just pick it up, try it out, read it. I love it. You'll love it. I promise. I don't promise that at all. But I hope you do, because I did. That was, I guess, it. That was probably the most erratic, ridiculous thing I've ever done on camera. It might not even translate to video. I'll put it out anyway, because you know what? People don't give a shit about my book reviews anyway. So, I love you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time, I guess.